In this episode, we are looking at wireless problems that users complain about all the time, even when they do not know the technical words for what they are experiencing. A user usually does not say, "I am seeing jitter," or "I think this is a standards mismatch." They say, "My video call keeps freezing, my phone drops off the internet in the bedroom, the website is taking forever, or the connection works fine in one room and then gets terrible in another." That is why this topic matters so much for beginners. Wireless problems often sound vague at first, but they usually follow a few clear patterns once you listen carefully and connect the complaint to what the network is doing. When you understand what drops, latency, jitter, and weak performance feel like from the user's side, and when you understand how interference, bad placement, congestion, and device mismatch cause those feelings, wireless troubleshooting becomes much easier and much less intimidating. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first useful habit is to listen to the way the user describes the problem in plain language. If someone says the internet keeps cutting out, that may point to drops. If they say everything feels delayed, that may point more toward latency. If they say a call sounds choppy or a game feels jerky even though the connection is still there, that may point more toward jitter. If they say nothing feels fully broken but everything feels weak, slow, or inconsistent, that may point toward signal quality, congestion, or poor wireless coverage. A beginner does not need to correct the user or force technical words into the conversation right away. The better move is to hear the complaint as a clue. Wireless support gets much easier when you stop waiting for perfect technical language and start learning what these different problems sound like in normal, everyday speech. A wireless drop is one of the easiest problems for a user to notice because the connection seems to disappear for a moment and then come back, or sometimes it disappears and stays gone until the device reconnects. The user might say the phone kicked off the network, the laptop lost internet again, or the stream stopped and then restarted by itself. What matters here is that the connection is not just slow. It is breaking. That can happen because the signal is weak, because interference is disrupting it, because the device is moving between coverage areas, or because the wireless environment is unstable enough that the device cannot stay connected cleanly. A beginner should think of a drop as a break in the conversation between the device and the wireless network. Once you see it that way, you begin asking better questions about where it happens, how often it happens, and whether movement, location, or crowding makes it more likely. Latency is a little different because the connection may still be alive while everything feels delayed. A user might click something and then wait too long for the page to respond. They may talk on a call and notice the other person answers a second later than expected. They may try to use a remote app and feel like every action is arriving late. In simple terms, latency is delay in the path between the device and the destination it is trying to reach. Wireless problems can increase that delay when the signal is weak, when the device keeps retrying transmissions, when too many devices are competing for time, or when the path to the wireless equipment is poor. For beginners, the important thing is not to think of latency as only a gaming word. It matters anywhere delay is noticeable, and users often describe it simply by saying the network feels slow even when pages eventually load. Jitter is even more confusing for beginners because users do not describe it in a clean way. They usually say the call sounds broken, the voice keeps cutting up, the meeting freezes for a second and then speeds up, or the game keeps stuttering. Jitter means the delay is not steady. Some pieces of the traffic arrive quickly, while others arrive later than they should, and that makes real-time activity feel rough or uneven. A steady delay is annoying, but uneven delay is what makes voices sound robotic, video jump around, and live activity feel broken even when the device still appears connected. A beginner technician should remember that jitter shows up most clearly in things that happen live, such as video calls, voice calls, remote sessions, and games. If the complaint is mainly about choppy real-time activity, that points in a slightly different direction than a simple complaint about slow file downloads or slow web pages. Weak wireless performance is the broadest category because it is the one users are most likely to describe in unclear ways. They may say the internet is bad, the wireless is weak in the back room, the signal bars look low, or the network feels worse than it used to. This kind of complaint can come from many different causes, which is why beginners sometimes feel stuck. The trick is to ask what weak actually means. Does the device disconnect, or does it stay connected but respond slowly? Does the problem follow one room, one floor, one time of day, or one type of device? Does it affect streaming, browsing, calls, or everything at once? Weak performance is not a diagnosis by itself. It is a starting point that tells the technician to look more closely at signal strength, interference, physical placement, shared demand, and whether the device and network are actually working well together. One of the biggest causes of wireless trouble is interference. In plain language, interference means something else is making it harder for the wireless signal to travel cleanly between the device and the wireless equipment. That something might be another nearby wireless network, household electronics, thick building materials, or even devices that share similar parts of the radio space. The user will not say, "I think this is interference." They will say the signal gets bad near the kitchen, the call breaks up in the same room every time, or the connection gets weird at night when everything in the apartment building seems busy. A beginner should understand that interference does not always make the connection disappear completely. Often it simply makes the signal less clean, which leads to retries, delay, stuttering, and inconsistent speeds. That is why wireless problems can feel random to the user even when they are actually following a very repeatable pattern. Physical placement matters just as much as interference, and this is one of the easiest causes for a beginner to overlook because the wireless router or access point may seem fine sitting wherever it was first plugged in. A wireless signal is not magic. It has to travel through walls, furniture, floors, appliances, and people, and every one of those things can weaken or change the path. If the wireless equipment is hidden in a far corner, shoved behind a television, placed inside a cabinet, or sitting low on the floor at one end of a building, the coverage may be much worse than the user expects. This is why some users say the network is perfect in one room and terrible in another. The network is not equally strong everywhere, and the equipment may simply be in a poor location for the space it is trying to cover. A beginner should learn to think about where the signal starts, not just where it fails. Distance also plays a very big role in weak wireless performance. The farther the device gets from the wireless source, the more likely the signal is to weaken, especially if there are walls, doors, or floors in between. Users often say the wireless keeps dropping in the bedroom, on the patio, upstairs, or at the far side of the office, and those location details matter a lot. A laptop sitting 10 feet from the router is not living in the same network conditions as a tablet trying to connect through multiple walls at the edge of the building. This matters because beginners sometimes get confused when the network works perfectly in the room where the wireless equipment sits. They think the network must be fine because they tested it there. The better lesson is that wireless has to be judged where the user actually uses it. A network can be strong near the source and still be weak where people are actually trying to work. Congestion is another major reason wireless performance feels poor, and this one is very common in homes, classrooms, apartments, and busy offices. Congestion means too many devices are trying to use the same wireless space at the same time. Even if the signal is strong, performance can still suffer because the devices are competing for a chance to talk. The user may describe this as everything slowing down at night, the meeting getting bad when the whole family is home, or the office wireless feeling worse after more people arrive in the morning. That is a very useful clue because congestion often follows time and crowd size more than room position. A beginner should think of congestion like too many people trying to speak in the same small room. Nobody may be totally disconnected, but the conversation becomes messy, slower, and harder to follow. That can show up as delay, jitter, dropped calls, poor streaming, and overall weak performance even though nothing is technically broken. Congestion also explains why one device may seem fine while another struggles. A small amount of web browsing may still work reasonably well during a crowded period, while a video call or game suffers badly because those activities are more sensitive to delay and uneven delivery. This is important for beginners because users often say the network is broken when what they really mean is that one kind of activity is no longer working well under shared demand. A house full of streaming devices, cameras, tablets, phones, and smart devices can put steady pressure on wireless capacity even when nobody thinks they are doing anything unusual. In a workplace, many laptops joining the same wireless area can create the same feeling. The lesson here is simple. Strong signal does not always mean strong experience. If the air is crowded with wireless activity, the user may still feel the network getting slower, rougher, and less dependable even while the bars on the screen look fine. Standards mismatch is another cause that beginners need to understand, even though users never describe it that way. A standards mismatch happens when a device and the wireless network support different generations, different speeds, or different feature levels, and the result is that the connection works, but not as well as the user expects. A person may buy a newer phone and think it should be faster everywhere, or they may use an older laptop and not realize it cannot take full advantage of the current wireless setup. In other cases, one old device on the network may affect the way the wireless environment behaves for others. A beginner does not need deep technical detail here. The important point is that not all devices speak wireless in exactly the same way. Some devices are newer, faster, or better matched to the network, and others are older or less capable, which can make performance feel uneven across the same building. This kind of mismatch can confuse users because the complaint sounds unfair. One person says my phone works fine here, but my laptop is terrible in the same spot. Another says the new tablet streams perfectly while the older device keeps buffering. That does not always mean one device is broken. It may simply mean the devices support different wireless features and handle the environment differently. Some are better at maintaining speed, some are better at handling certain signal conditions, and some are much weaker when the network is crowded or the signal is not perfect. A beginner technician should remember that wireless troubleshooting is not only about the network side. The device matters too. If one device works well and another performs poorly in the same place, that points toward device capability, device settings, or standards mismatch rather than toward a total building-wide wireless failure. A very helpful beginner habit is to ask where, when, and on which devices the problem happens. Where tells you whether placement or coverage is involved. When tells you whether congestion or outside activity may be involved. Which devices tells you whether the issue is broad across the network or limited to one kind of hardware. If the problem happens only at the far end of the house, think placement and distance. If it happens mostly in the evening, think congestion. If it affects only one older laptop while newer phones work well, think device capability or mismatch. If it happens in one room with a microwave nearby or lots of neighboring networks, think interference. These simple questions do a lot of the heavy lifting in wireless support. They help the technician stop treating every complaint as just bad internet and start narrowing the problem to the conditions that are most likely causing it. Another useful lesson is that different wireless problems can create very similar user complaints. Interference, poor placement, congestion, and standards mismatch can all lead to slow browsing, frozen calls, buffering video, or dropped sessions. That is why beginners sometimes feel like wireless support is nothing but guesswork. It is not guesswork if you learn to notice patterns. Interference tends to follow certain locations or nearby devices. Poor placement tends to affect the edges of coverage and places behind obstacles. Congestion tends to follow busy times and many active devices. Standards mismatch tends to show up when one device struggles while others perform better under the same conditions. The user may use the same sentence for all four cases by saying the wireless is awful, but the technician's job is to pull that sentence apart and match it to the pattern underneath it. By the end of this topic, wireless drops, jitter, latency, and weak network performance should feel much more understandable. A drop is a break in connection, latency is delay, jitter is uneven delay that hurts live activity, and weak performance is the broad feeling that the wireless is simply not doing its job well. Users may not use those words, but their complaints still point toward them if you listen carefully. Interference, poor placement, congestion, and standards mismatch can all create similar symptoms, which is why good wireless troubleshooting depends on noticing where the problem happens, when it happens, and which devices are affected. Once you build that habit, wireless support stops feeling like a vague, invisible problem and starts feeling like something you can read through the user's experience, the environment around the device, and the way the network behaves under real-world conditions.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.